Blockchain, Brad back. Today this is part 2 of my talk on the permissioned blockchain, and specifically what I want to do is go through and explain why the permissioned aspect is relevant. It doesn't mean that I agree with it, it doesn't mean I support it or endorse it. It just means that from an investment position it's good for us to know why it's relevant and how we can benefit from that knowledge. So again, just harping back on the original subject of today, I want to talk about what's known as the interoperable blockchain network, but I want to take a word and place it in there known as the interoperable permission blockchain network. And the reason why, guys, is that ideally we'd like to see this kind of network, this web-like blockchain sphere that is gradually evolving now through different protocols and technologies. We'd love to see that evolve in the permissionless state, solely as such. However, through my research, and I'm sure many of you guys have noticed as well, that's simply not what's happening in the corporate world. In the blockchain research sphere, right now in places like MIT, in Berkeley, in all kinds of universities, in all kinds of private research centers, like in Toronto, for example, certainly in South Korea and in China, there's a huge push to privatize the blockchain industry. So that's why I want to talk to you about today, because I want to try and highlight a link between this propensity for permissionalization to public blockchain investment. So just to rehash what the hell I'm talking about in terms of permission blockchains. Well, guys, at the moment, as I sort of mentioned in part 1, there are specific consortiums and alliances that are being forged. And as you start to do your layer 1 or 2 research, you'll probably start to think that they are all competing against each other, and you're desperately trying to work out what the hell is going on, and which one do you pick, and which one do you invest in, and which token is the best. But as you get a little bit deeper, and again, this is just my supposition, it seems to be to me that through the evidence that whilst they do work in competition by function, they are now trying to merge into a larger consortium to assert themselves in the private space of within the blockchain as a whole. Because right now, as I sort of mentioned in a previous talk, there is this bifurcation of the public and the private blockchain sector. But what I have learned is that there's through the trust protocol technologies that these consortiums have established by spending a lot of money in their investment dollars, by spending a lot of their own capital, because they have a huge support network and a huge funds in which they can draw money from to conduct research. They've been able to establish these important distributed ledger technology protocols and these bridging protocols that allow for the trustless environments to become trusted. So why the hell does that matter, and why is it important for an investor? Well, basically, guys, what it means is that these particular companies will have significant relevance and stakes in public blockchains, because remember, as I said before, this public blockchain is going to be utilized, and right now the number one public blockchain to be selected and compatible is Ethereum, and that's all because of the Ethereum's virtual machine. They found a way in which, through their own protocol designs, to append onto the Ethereum network, and then from there permissionalize it out. So guys, I'm going to be showing you a diagram here, hopefully, or somewhere on the green screen, that talks through the process of permissionalizing a public blockchain. So that's quite exciting, because up until now my assumption was perhaps it needs to fork in some way, not in the generic sense that we see like with Bitcoin or with the original Ethereum, but more in the sense of would they need to establish their own specific and unique blockchain. And it appears to me that whilst there was a lot of research to do that, they don't need to. They can actually do all of this with Ethereum, and they can also do it with other compatible blockchains, and that's what makes this so cool. So yeah, if you want to, as I said, if you want to go and learn more about Coco is that bridging protocol that enfranchises this translation, that enables this particular blockchain, Ethereum, to become a permissionalized or permission-based blockchain. You can certainly go on and check out other source information. I'm going to put down the links below, everything I can find on that. But yeah, it's really exciting times, simply because if you have investments in Ethereum or ERC20 tokens, my view is that you are in a secure place in terms of the, the investment future, or the future value of Ethereum. I can only see it surpass Bitcoin for these reasons. So moving on, guys, as I said up on the screen here, I'm going to try and put up what I've designed here. It's basically called the permissionalization process flowchart. And I'll just go through that with you. But my thinking was the way in which a blockchain becomes permissionalized is from the top down. So as I said before, you've got these huge corporations, and essentially, that's the oligopolist cloud, let's call it. And from there, there's this huge push to collaborate together, to forge very strong corporate connections, and by doing that, they have these super consortiums, or this more far-reaching consortium. And then, as I said, then they use their resources to build the technology, and they've done that through the first layer, which is the DLT, or the distributed ledger technology. They've done that. They've done that through things like establishing Burrow, Corda, and Fabric. Now, they are all related to those consortiums. You can go and check them out. But the number one of all of those right now is the Microsoft Azure program, or the protocol rather, that acts as that translator to enable public blockchains, public generic blockchains that are generation 2/3 to become usable in the private sector. So that's phenomenal, because Coco, that Microsoft Azure program, suddenly means that we can pay attention to the growth certainty of Ethereum. Because I'll try and put it in a different context. Imagine that you've been pushed out, that all the corporate doors have been closed simply by one default measure or factor, and that is one of trust. Imagine that you have suddenly the facility, not like Coco, that opens up every single door in the corporate world for investment in at least one generic public blockchain. What is likely to happen to the value of that particular blockchain? So again, I don't want to provide financial advice, but I can see that Coco is the beginning of significant changes in the blockchain game. And I'll really encourage you to go out and research it yourself. But I'll just continue on with the flowchart. Once the permissionalization happens, I just want to make it clear, it's not that Ethereum will suddenly become a separate Ethereum. It's just that its function will change, and it's enfranchised to become that permissioned state through that technology. And then what happens from that? Obviously, the capacity for dApps to append doesn't change, but they are all based on a permission version. And there's one more step that is likely to happen, and I've alluded to this before. As the final step in the flowchart, because Ethereum is essentially an isolated blockchain, and whilst it does have infinite dApps that can append onto it, and in this case privatized and permissioned dApps, we still want to, from the standpoint of business, you want to see that particular capacity can flourish into a vast network. And there's other blockchains known as interoperable blockchain networks, as I was saying before, that facilitate that expansion. And one of them, which is listed in one of these key consortium membership lists, is called Cosmos, and that's hidden under the banner of Tendermint. So I would advise you to go and look at it. I read through the protocols and through the white paper, and there's every chance, in my opinion, that they'll utilize Cosmos, and Vitalik himself has actually been talking about this, to expand the Ethereum network far beyond its isolated state. So again, that's one more reason to consider Ethereum, because it potentially could be one of 2 or 3 huge players in the blockchain game as it forges its way ahead and asserts itself as the ultimate decentralized web structure. So guys, I hope I haven't been too verbose. I just want to finish off and give you a couple of tips with regard to some hints that are provided in these consortium membership lists. And in them, there's some cryptocurrencies that you may know that are essentially businesses that are paid to become part of these consortiums. So I'll just go through them one by one, and then you can write them down, or you could throw the information away. It's up to you, but I found it quite useful. So the first one with Hyperledger, one of the key consortiums that are known today, there are 3 that I noticed, and they are Onchain, Factom, and Patientry. Now, on-chain doesn't have any direct connection with the public in that you can't invest directly with on-chain. It would be awesome if you could pay into the DNA protocols and be part of that. But from what I've read, and I have read a lot about NEO so far, is that there is every likelihood that there is some sort of cross-chain connection with on-chain via NEO. So perhaps, and this is only speculative, but perhaps when you have NEO, you have an implicit connection with on-chain somehow. So worth knowing. Factom, an amazing company that certainly worth looking into, and Patient Tree. Then we move across to the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, which again is, I've talked about this at length before, it's just simply an alliance forged by various independent parties who could foresee the value of a conglomerate. And inside there, these are some of the ones that you may be familiar with. They are Bancor, Dash, Centra, Consensus. Consensus is important because they are going to do their ICOs on their own platform. And then there's Tendermint, as I've mentioned before, with Cosmos, MusicCoin, Microsoft, and because they'll be relating, they'll have others, they'll have other dApps or perhaps in the future. But number one I wanted to mention was 10x. It's good to have some positive news that's on there. And then going to the third consortium list, or alliance in this case, is the Trusted Internet of Things Alliance. And in there you have some interesting ones. You actually have the IOTA coin, which you expect, or the IOTA company. But then you have Qtum. So Qtum, if you don't know, it's a Chinese blockchain. And when all of the FUD happened in China, Qtum essentially started to establish a business in Denver. And they moved, not just within China, but they moved outside into an international domain. So the fact that Qtum's on this is quite interesting. They aren't going anywhere. And then the last one is that there's a connection with Civic to Microsoft. So guys, that's just information. They are not tips to invest so much, but tips to provide you with information for you to go and investigate further. Well, I've written quite a lot of different notes, but it's underneath everything, guys, I guess to finish off, I want to say that if you want to research one thing today that may help you secure your investment, or secure your stake in Ethereum, go and research Coco. Coco is the one protocol that's going to show you that in the private sector, Ethereum is the real deal. Sorry guys, my battery went flat on the camera. But I'll just finish off and say thank you so much for listening to my talk. I really appreciate your time. I've tried to provide you with really current information. Check out the links below. Don't forget to give us a like or ring the bell so you get other notifications later on. But essentially, I just want to say thank you so much for being part of the crypto community. Thank you for allowing me to be part of that. I really enjoy that communication. I don't monetize the videos, but I just enjoy your feedback, and I really enjoy trying to understand this space a bit better. So it's Blockchain Brad signing off. Until next time, I'll see you soon.